G'day crew, welcome to Goat Fantasy. It's the Monday Rage Trade edition. Round 2 Rage Trades brought to you by checkmyrates.au. Visit the website, it's free to use. Take control of your financial future. Welcome back to Goat Fantasy. Great to have your company. I'm your host, Drew Jones. Thanks for being along for the ride in season 2026. So, Monday Rage Trades. We're back here again. Disappointing weekend for some as well, with some pretty poor premium performances. Best 18 scoring almost makes things a bit fruity. So I guess laid in with all of that is that, again, we've been hit with injuries to premiums after we thought, bad start with Errol last week, but we cashed up, got ready to hopefully do some upgrades this week. And again, we're having to do patchwork and we can't really improve our teams, which is frustrating. But we'll try our best. So Connor Rozee, likely long-term, we'll find out in a couple of hours, but pretty serious hamstring injury with tendon involved. So likely surgery, 12 to 14 weeks, that sort of range. So we're shopping for potentially a premium defender here. So coming off the bye, Dane Zorko. We know the way that Brisbane play. We know that Zorks is a sick man. He loves getting his hands on the footy. Observable first, all that sort of stuff. And just despite his advancing age, which is always the reason I guess we don't go into a season wanting to necessarily heavily invest in him, and the early buy doesn't help, he continues to get it done. And he certainly played injured at the back end of last year, and it seems like he's fully fit to start the season. So no reason why, if you're brave enough, you can't buy into Zorko as your replacement for Connor Rozee. And then the slightly more affordable option is Josh Dacos, who I rate him so highly. I think he's a superstar in real life. And certainly the Pies rely on him so much for drive from an offensive point of view in their team alongside his brother Nick. And sort of that splashing of halfback with a bit of time through the midfield certainly is a very fantasy-friendly role, and he started the season just so well. So if you want to ride that wave after the bye, I can absolutely understand why. I don't think that he's necessarily shown the kind of Zorko ceiling, but he did punch out a massive score in round 1. So that's worth noting. The budget option here is Dan Houston coming off the bye. He's certainly performing way above his price tag. Terrible debut season, as we know, carried the hip injury. But the Pies just seem more committed to him as a distributor, so I think that's a pretty safe bet. But I know a lot of you would already have Houston, so that's probably not an option for you this week. But Dacos and Zorko at the top of the tree from our perspective at Goat Fantasy. And then if you want to go the DPP option here, if you can move Sam Grill around or whoever you've got floating between back and centre, then you do have the option to bring in Nick Dacos, who of course is so expensive, but there are times during a season where it feels like he's playing in a different league, and that's sort of the sense that we got early in the season. He's fresh off his bye, and I think he's clearly shown that he has something of a chip on his shoulder. I think the fact that he didn't get the best on ground in State of Origin just added another layer to that. He wants team success, but he also wants to be the best. And I think another season for him pushing. He got something like 20 handball receives against St Kilda in opening round. I mean, that is it's almost 60 points. If he kicks every single time, that's 60 points just from his teammates giving him the ball. It's an incredible thing to have in your team. Just a little flag on Bedford this week. So Adam Kingsley said last week at his press conference that he felt like Toby was potentially pushing to be back for this game from a hamstring. And of course, he has traditionally done the job on Nick. Would be a big ask for Bedford to come back into the side and immediately do a lockdown tagging job on Nick Dacos. Dacos is a keeper for us. We're going to have him for the rest of the year. So it's not all about 1 week, but just a little flag. Max Holmes is a pod that I like in the midfield at the moment. I've got him in my trade plans. New game style just seems to suit him, and certainly a trusted player for Chris Scott to run through the middle, and just so dynamic, uses the ball so well. There's always a tag flag with Max, but he, so far this season, has been extremely impressive, and certainly could be a nice point of difference for you in your midfield. And then if you're replacing Christian Petrarca this week, Brian Myers, so reliable, plays such a beautiful role through the midfield in the forward line for the Cats. Of course, they want it in his hands. They want to use him as much as they can. The back part of last year for him across both formats was just so fruitful. I think he's the safest one coming off the bye. And then the budget option for me in the forward line is Murphy Reid. I would like to have one more week of data, and I think that's why I'm sort of at this stage leaning towards holding Petrarca just to make a final decision on the forwards and use that cash in the bank, because we weren't going to have Petrarca this week anyway. But Murphy Reid is spending more time around the ball. They funnel everything through him at Fremantle because he is such a great user, classy. And I think he's just sort of beaten his way into this midfield rotation, and even if he's playing at half forward, he's rolling up to the stoppage. So he's been given more opportunities to score from Justin Longmuir. The only issue is you're certainly getting value for money. Like, he's going to score well above his average, but is that enough? Like, he's probably not going to be a top 6 forward. So are you willing to trade Petrarca down to a guy who's value, but he's not going to give you necessarily hundreds every week or at all? Mate, he might be capping out at sort of that 85 to 95 range. So that's, I guess, where our head needs to be when we're choosing this forward, is that Gryan Miers appears to be the most stable top 6 option without a buy that we can bring in and hopefully lock and leave in our teams. Just from a rookie perspective, so Jack Watkins looked quite good in the midfield for Port Adelaide once Rosie went out, and potentially this week there's no Bergman in the team either. So if you're looking for cash generation, he's your man. Of course, Milan Murdoch was superb for the Eagles again. Looks like his job security is good, even with Tim Kelly back in the side. Willem Dersma, the same, 2 great goals. Certainly in Supercoach, he looks like he'd be a really good pick. Braden Cook is still on the bubble, and just with the injury that's happened with Archie, perhaps his job security is even more solid. And just for the players that are on the bubble this week, from a Supercoach perspective, so Bruin at Geelong, then Dersma and CDT at the Eagles, big score this week, but I'm not sure about whether we can put our trust in an 18-year-old forward/ruck. Grill's on the bubble, so is Cook, I mentioned, Marshall, McAndrew, Jagger Smith, we've all got him, Devon Robertson, and then Watkins at Port, Murdoch at the Eagles, and Bill Myers at North Melbourne. So there's a few rookies that we need to have in Supercoach. You've got that extra trade if you need to use a boost to get these guys in who are going to make us some coin. On the guys that we'd love to rage trade this week, I mean, yes, we talk about who we're bringing in, but there's some guys we'd like to target on the way out. So I would love to trade out of Parrish this week, and I'm considering holding Petrarca through what would have been his buy, get an extra week of sort of data about the forwards. But that would be maybe a slightly left of centre option, not to just trade the 2 premiums straight up. And then, Windsor and Blackiston scoring hasn't been great. Throw Parrish into that mix of mid-prices who seem to be failed picks. And then disappointing with Sharp, if you have him as a rookie. Ankle injury for him, perhaps not too serious. And of course, we'll have all of that injury news come out as this Monday ticks along. But in terms of what is really fantasy relevant, we know Petrarca, and we know that Rosé is going to be relatively long-term. There's some draft implications for those other injuries. So I'll give an update on GOAT Fantasy tomorrow about just what we know from an injury perspective, what's happened. Liberatore doing a hamstring at the Western Bulldogs as well. So there's a fair bit around. It's been an absolutely brutal weekend. So we appreciate your time on GOAT Fantasy as always. Monday Rage Trades, one of our new favourites. There's no doubt about that. So keep coming back to GOAT Fantasy throughout the week. Heaps of news we'll be getting to, of course, on Wednesday. We'll do our mailbag and we chat to Warnie on Fridays. And then we'll be out and about reporting on all the fantasy news going on ahead of round 3. Round 3? Are we at round 3 already? Jeez, it's flying here in season 2026. Great to have your company on GOAT Fantasy. Thanks to Luke and Darcy for all your help as well, the GOAT Fantasy family. Hit us up on Twitter and Instagram and keep coming back to the podcast. We'll catch you soon.